12th house in astrology is arguably most misunderstood. A lot of astrologers talk about it as this terrible dark place where we face our self-defeating tendencies and struggle with our inner demons. And as somebody born with 3 planets in the 12th house, I'd like to believe that it's more than that. Of course, there's hardship in the 12th house, but there's also tremendous potential for growth, enlightenment, and self-acceptance. Let's take a closer look and explore what having planets in this house means for you. My name is Anastasia. I'm a traditional Western astrologer specializing in natal, relationship, and predictive readings. If you enjoy my content and you'd like to support my work, the easiest way to do it is to like or comment, subscribe, and press the notification bell. You also have the option of buying me a coffee to say thank you. I appreciate everyone who does that. Additionally, if you have questions, if you'd like to work with me, if you want to know what's ahead for you in 2024, you can book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com, for a personal face-to-face consultation. I have done a general video on the houses. Check that out at the link below. And let me know if you have planets in the 12th house. I'm someone who has her Sun, Venus, and Mars in the 12th house, so I'm very 12th house-ian person in a way. And if you don't have any planets here, still listen for the planet that rules your 12th house, because no house is ever empty. It doesn't mean that you don't have self-defeating tendencies or you don't face hardship if you don't have planets in the 12th house. Check out the planet in charge, because it can tell you more. For example, if your 12th house is Aries, you look at Mars or listen for Mars. If it's Capricorn, you listen for Saturn, etc. So what is 12th house? It is a cadent house, right? So cadent houses represent houses that were angular but are now far from the angle, or they just have fallen from being angular. And like angular houses tend to be very important, while cadent houses tend to have less power. So planets here are busy problem solving. For example, you know, in the 6th house, you're busy taking care of your health. In the 12th house, you're busy like taking care of your mental health, for example. This is also the house that lies between kind of life and death, right? Because if you think about it, the 12th house is actually on the ascendant while the mother is in labor. So it is very much like, it's very much that border house, the house that represents the boundary between life and death, right? Like the mother is going through a difficult time, the child is being squeezed through the birth canal. So there is an element of difficulty there. There's an element of pain in both the physical experience of birthing and the actual experience of the 12th house. 12th house is also a dark house, similarly to 2nd, 6th, and the 8th. And dark houses are the houses that do not make any traditional aspects to the ascendant, because signs that are next to one another do not make traditional 1 of 5 aspects, doesn't exist between them. So suggesting that things in this house they can slip through the cracks. You don't see them, right? It's in the 2nd house, finances can slip through the cracks. In the 8th house, your partner's resources, your debts. In the 6th house, your physical health. You don't eat well, you get stomachache. And in the 12th house, if you don't address some things, they can build up and lead to a mental crisis of sorts. So in that regard, it has a darker reputation, of course. It's also the house where Saturn rejoices, which can tell you that it's the house in which we face some of the shadows and do a lot of deep work, because Saturn is not afraid of hard work. So if you have Saturn in this house, you definitely have some sort of supportive energy suggesting that you have the power to overcome the more difficult times. It's been known as the house of bad spirit. Like I told you, there's a lot of negative reputation of this house, and we're going to try to disprove those. And the final sort of logistical element is this is the house opposite the 6th, and the 6th is your physical health, while 12th house is your mental health. So some of the things that are associated with the 12th house, because it's the dark house, because of other reasons, it is representative of the blind spot and things that are hiding in our blind spot. And a lot of times people might assume it's other people, but in reality, it's not. There is a story of the Emperor of Qin, who was the first emperor of China. I think his name was Qin. Yeah, so basically he was the first empire, and he heard the prophecy saying that he will be destroyed by who. And so he thought that referred to a tribe in northern China. He basically mobilized his entire country to build a great defensive wall. While later on, the person that was responsible for him crumbling and falling apart wasn't that tribe. It was actually his son, also named Hu. So he was looking outside, he was looking elsewhere, while in reality, the blind spot, the reason for his own undoing, was right next to him. So with the 12th house, a lot of times we have similar mistakes. We tend to apply the energy to somebody else, right? Like we may blame our parents, we may blame our partners, we may blame our friends for things, but a lot of times it's us ourselves that are being self-defeating, that are being self-undoing, and that are not acknowledging some of the difficulty that we have experienced. So 12th house planets pretty much always represent some kind of difficulty, some kind of lack of nurturance, a lack of attention. Like if you have the sun there, maybe your father wasn't there and you didn't get to see that strong, confident energy. And so it's like, it's sort of like a child with special needs. I've read an article on the 12th house. I can tag it below, but I can't remember who said it. I think it was Dana. I'm definitely going to tag the article below, because there are so many great sort of kernels of wisdom in that article. Like she goes into so much depth on the 12th house. But it's like, it's an indicator that you have suffered somewhere, that you have experienced cruelty, difficulty, neglect. And you need to attend to that energy. You need to, sort of acknowledge it and start with that. And you need to bring it out into the open and show it to the world and find like healthy manifestations or healthy ways to use this planet. So on the negative, this could be the place where you are battling out your mental health demons, and the place where you are struggling and maybe facing shadows or doing things that are self-defeating. Planets in the 12th house can be very much indicative of the 12th house, of like self-defeating, right? Like, for example, if you have Mars in the 12th house, you may not see your temper and may not see how you yourself can be selfish. If your Venus is here, then maybe you're afraid to show how beautiful you are, or you're not, you're sort of you're hiding your talents and doubting yourself. If you have Uranus here, you may be hiding your unique quirks and not feeling comfortable expressing them. With Mercury, you might be afraid of speaking out. So there's a lot of difficulty and a lot of inner, like I said, a lot of it is like just inner self-defeating qualities. So taking in account the 12th house is the house where you have no control. It's been compared, like thinking of the mother in labor. There's not much you can do. The child is coming out, right? Or it's been compared to a shipwreck. It's the house where you're being swept away by the wave of karma, by the past events, and you can either fight or you can surrender. That's why 12th house can be worked with quite well if you are a spiritual individual, and if you sort of kneel to that pain and those problems, and also see what kind of kernels of wisdom and gifts can come from here. But some of the, some of the other things that are represented by the 12th house that are more negative are hidden enemies versus 7th house could be open enemies. Most of the times you are your own hidden enemy. It can also be the place of mental sickness where you are more likely, with planets here, you're more likely to struggle with mental health difficulties or feel, sometimes feel like you want to escape reality and then struggle with addiction. It's also the place, sometimes planets in this house can represent people in your life who struggle with addiction. For example, the sun here could mean a father who was an alcoholic or an addict. The moon here could represent a mother that had an escapist tendency. So one important thing to know, it's not always about you. It can also be about people in your life. As well as 12th house, if we go with that analogy of a shipwreck, people who go through shipwrecks in their life, people who go through crisis are in the 12th house. So it could be you being in a hospital or prison or a mental asylum or ashram, like a Buddhist temple or anything like that. Or it could be you working at those places, right? It's not like every single person with planets in the 12th house is going to have a mental breakdown and end up in a mental institution, but they might be drawn to shine light on those topics. My son is in the 12th house and I do astrology, right? I talk about something that is not very tangible, and part of my life mission is to share my knowledge with you guys and to shine light on this spiritual realm, plus help people. And that's how a lot of times you work with this. First of all, you acknowledge that you still have those desires and you give them healthy outlets. And not everyone with these placements will end up struggling, right? Like Joe Biden has a lot of planets here, and then right now nobody comes to mind, but there's definitely multiple artists that have strong 12th houses. I think Meryl Streep has a few planets here. I'm thinking of a singer, famous Aquarius singer. What was his name? Maybe he was a Capricorn, Aquarius rising singer, I think. Give me a second. And forgive me, David Bowie. David Bowie had planets in the 12th house. So now that I'm sorry for taking this quick step away, because I thought I wrote them down, but I guess somehow, I skipped it. So, like I said, could definitely be a sign. It's pretty much always a sign of some kind of doubt, some kind of fear, some kind of inner wound. But it can also be an indicator of like working with people who have those wounds, or other people in your life struggling and you being there to help them. Always two potentials. You can get lost. You can blame life. You can not see that with Mars in the 12th house, you maybe have anger issues, or with Venus here, you may be overindulging, or you can work with these placements. You can lean to them. You can tap into the sources of strength and inspiration that you have and learn from these placements. So, definitely being aware. I feel like I've said it a bunch of times at this point, but being aware and then making a choice, whether, choosing whether you want to be submerged by this energy or you want to rise above it, or you want to float, you want to swim with the waves, right? Instead of trying to swim against them. If it's a shipwreck and it's insane and intense, and you're getting swept away, it's going to do you more good if you kind of go with the flow and you explore. So learning to accept it, learning to shift perspective and accepting the lessons and seeing these as energies you need to develop, being alone more, allowing yourself to be alone, because 12th house is the place where you experience breakthroughs and solitude a lot more. And doing spiritual things, giving back to people who need your attention, doing volunteer work, helping people in need, meditating, doing yoga, just anything that helps you become more aware of these shadow things that normally people don't like to look at. Therapy can be a great tool. So that was a lot on the 12th house. I just think it's something you can talk about forever. I hope you found this useful. And now let's talk about planets in the 12th house. Please let me know what your planets in the 12th house are. So if you have the sun in your 12th house, the sun represents the father. The sun represents ideals and perfect images. And so a lot of times when your sun is in the 12th house, your father could have been somehow missing or somehow not there. Sometimes it's literal, they may be walking away and not being there. Sometimes it just means that they worked a lot and they weren't there to show you support, to do the actual fathering. So as a result, you end up perhaps struggling to understand yourself or struggling to find that inner light. There might be a lot of confusion and a lot of sort of questioning who you are. No matter how old you are, you may still feel a little bit uncertain. And the way to work with this a lot of times is letting yourself be alone, exploring spirituality, doing, like meditating and reflecting and journaling, and not running away from dark feelings into escapist tendencies, because that could also show up with this placement where you just don't understand yourself and you rely on other people to tell you who you are, or you abuse alcohol, whatever it might be. So, you may be a solitary person or somebody who prefers to be by yourself, but it's also very much with the sun in the 12th house, you are meant to be somebody who shines light on the hidden things. So, you're meant to be someone who like maybe picks out diamonds in the rough, and you maybe are a writer, or maybe you're a person who like helps other writers, or maybe you are an astrologer, or maybe you are some kind of imaginative, intuitive person who uses their knowledge to guide people who are going through a tough time. So, being aware of where you come from and choosing wisely sources of inspiration and paternal figures that you accept is very helpful here. Because, if your father is not there or your mother wasn't there, you can always surround yourself with people who are nurturing and supportive, and then trust that you already know deep within your heart who you are. But it's interesting because, like it's my placement, and I feel like I leaned on astrology initially to try and understand myself. So here we are, X years later. So if you have the moon in the 12th house, the moon represents the mother. So a lot of times early in life, there is a problem getting enough care from the mother. There might be a mother who is working a lot. 12th house represents prisons, asylums, hospitals. So having a mother who's a nurse is likely here. If it's a more difficult placement, let's say if your moon is also conjunct Saturn or it's opposite Saturn, you may not have a traditional mother figure. Maybe she was an addict, or maybe she wasn't there. So a lot of times a child learns to be self-sufficient, right? Because of that early lack of compassion and nurturance and support. I'm gonna take a sip. You learn how to take care of yourself, and you learn to create an image that is very self-sufficient, self-reliant, where you're the one taking care of others. But in reality, you will always need that care. So you might end up being needy or complaining, or sort of, there's I think you may not see that inside of you there is an emotionally hungry child, but other people might see it. So being aware, once again, being aware that you need that nurturance, asking other people for help, and not, kind of awareness is always the first step, I think, and then learning to take care of yourself, like avoiding sliding into the negative habits of like escaping and pretending like you're fine when you're not. You may find a lot of comfort in meditation, in alone time. Alone time will be crucial for you to maybe take a break and take care of yourself for a moment, right? Show up for yourself. Quiet time will be will be helpful to restore peace and find inspiration. You will likely enjoy doing work that serves other people, but once again, it's like really important to have that balance between your needs and other people's needs, and not to give up on your own needs while you're serving other people. Also, a lot of times makes for very imaginative people and people who make really great writers. Let me know if that's your placement, and how has your childhood been, or how is your life like? What is it like right now? If you have Mercury in the 12th house, so as in 12th house, hiding things, right? Like people with Mercury in the 12th house can hide or doubt their intellect. And if we're talking about early origin, there could have been a teacher, there could have been a parent or an authority figure that made you doubt your ideas, and now you are sort of carrying it within and not expressing your true feelings, or really struggling to speak up, struggling to assert yourself, even struggling to reach out to a friend when you're having a silly fight, right? I have a friend with this placement, so this story may or may not be personal. So on the negative, right, a lot of self-doubt, a lot of fears about expressing yourself, second-guessing, doubting yourself. On the positive, though, once you accept it, once you see the origin of it, you can understand how deep of a thinker you are, how great of a researcher you are. You might naturally have like mind that is very well suited for investigation and for digging deep into things. Like you can look things up really quickly. You can become a powerful writer. You can become a really great therapist because you have that ability to see things that are submerged and hidden. Writing things down and journaling and kind of writing in seclusion, just like taking a beat, could be really, really helpful for you. Those with Venus in the 12th house early in life may struggle to see themselves as beautiful, or may struggle to express the more sensual side of their personality, whether that is because they were bullied or they were put down by their parents. So there might be a lot of sort of fears around expressing your sensuous side, expressing even your sexual side, artistic side, loving side. And a lot of times you will try with this placement, you may try to recreate the turmoil you've experienced romantically, either with your early relationships or the turmoil you experienced as a child with your parents potentially. So the more, like with Venus in the 12th house, you may feel like turbulence in relationships is a norm and sort of unconsciously be drawn into a lot of romantic dramas. This is very much a placement of attracting people who are unavailable, going through a lot of breakups, and just falling for people who don't feel the same. And as always, the clue here, the key here is to becoming aware, right? Is becoming aware. So if you are attracting people who are unavailable, maybe you are unavailable, maybe you're scared of being hurt, so you keep kind of going for people that, cannot fully commit, so you cannot be hurt truly. And yeah, like understanding yourself, learning to build your self-worth, learning to explore your creative talents and do things and like paint or sing or dance, even if it feels scary and uncomfortable, right? Like learning to see yourself as this beautiful and worthy and magical snowflake, I think, is important. And I think as you grow, as you become self-aware, as you know that, maybe part of you likes drama, you can try to create drama in relationships through healthy outlets. Maybe you role play, or maybe you and your partner fight for something together. And that could be important. So be mindful of like choosing difficult and toxic relationships versus being aware and making choices that are healthy for you, that perhaps do not quite align with your early life but are still better for you. If you have Mars in the 12th house, so this could be interesting. A lot of times with Mars in the 12th house, you likely grew up being told that you're not supposed to get angry, or being angry resulted in very kind of bad, painful things, and you potentially suppress anger. You may have a very difficult relationship, kind of shadowy, hidden relationship to anger, where you would never tell other people that you're angry. You would never nobody would assume that you are, because they just see, 12th house planets are hidden. They're like shadows lurking in the shadows. So other people might see you, or even you likely to see yourself this way. Other people might see you better, actually, but you're likely to see yourself as this like non-aggressive peacemaker, while in reality, at some point it will burst, and at some point you can be the person who's like the angriest, because there is so much anger and so much frustration that you have not expressed. So here, you got to learn how to express frustration. You got to learn how to deal with conflict, how to assert yourself, because together with anger, there might also be fears of going after what you want, and maybe struggles with boundaries, maybe struggles being assertive and standing up for yourself. So my advice here would be taking martial arts classes, being physically active, like learning to go deal with conflict and not express your own feelings. A lot of times Mars in the 12th house could also be a sign of a lot of internal conflict, where you're being extra difficult on yourself. But I think people around you, if you ask them, am I an angry person? They might tell you that at times you are. And in reality, or in your head, you might feel like you're not. And another positive way that Mars in the 12th house can show up is fighting for some kind of noble struggle. So like fighting for spiritual art, fighting as a doctor. Like Mars in the 12th house could be very much like a scientist or a doctor, somebody who's like fighting the noble fight, right? And making the lives of other people better. 12th house also represents foreign lands. So with Mars here, you might be somebody who fights for your country in a foreign land. Please let me know how this resonates. How has your life been with this placement, if that's what you have in your natal chart? If you have Jupiter in the 12th house, so Jupiter in the 12th can be a sign of not seeing your own wisdom, or struggling to see yourself as a teacher, as a guide, as a mentor, as somebody who has a lot to offer to other people. Well, in reality, you actually have deep insights, and you have this strong ability to see within people's hearts and be this empowering person. But like I said, you may doubt your own wisdom, you may doubt your own optimism. On the positive, Jupiter is always positive, right? So it can, in the 12th house, and can be quite protective of your mental health. It can be protective of your even like hidden enemies, right? Things happening to you where like you fall down, but you fall smack into $100 bill or something, and you don't injure yourself. So there might be a little bit of like protective energy to this Jupiter. The ability to see kind of light in the shadows with Jupiter in the 12th house could be a powerful tool for being a politician, for being a journalist, for being an actor. And you can also find a lot of success in the work that helps or benefits others, like being a doctor, being a social worker, being a politician. Jupiter is quite lovely, so it's sort of hard to go wrong with Jupiter in any house. If you have Saturn in the 12th house, Saturn is in its joy in the 12th house, so Saturn can be quite constructive here. But of course, Saturn in the 12th suggests that you've dealt with restrictions, you've dealt with feeling of loneliness, maybe feeling like an outsider. There may be like your inner kind of blind spot, and your inner struggles can be connected to being too cautious, to being too fearful, and sort of leading those feelings control you. I'm just thinking of somebody I knew with this placement. Yeah, like she was definitely, we were friends for a little bit with this, I was friends with this girl for a little bit, and I think she would focus on the negatives a bit more, trying to protect herself from experiencing pain because, you know, she's experienced pain in the past. So, you know, you are someone who knows difficulty, you know, loss, you know, shadows of relationships, and Saturn definitely in the 12th will make sure that you've had to maybe like abandon things once in a while, or you've had to sort of face restriction early in life. But Saturn here makes you grow through things. It makes sure that you do not give up. It makes sure that you are committed to your progress, and you know, it makes you a very reliable person. It makes you someone who is very capable. So advice here is try not to get too stuck in the negative mindset, and remember that things can and will get better. And you can also use this energy quite wisely if you become the person who helps others, because you have that, like, once again, you've dealt with difficulty, you've dealt with pain, you know how to guide other people through it. If you have Uranus in the 12th house, you might hide your quirks. You might not express your unique qualities. Like, you love astrology, but everybody in your environment hates astrology, so you don't express it, right? Or you have some kind of unique talents and you don't express it. So there might be a lot of hiding how different you are until it builds up one day and people find out, or like it explodes one day and people learn that you're very different on some level, that maybe you're married to 5 people or something, or you're in an open marriage or something like that, even though these days that's not that shocking. But there might be an element of like you're hiding something shocking about you. You're likely to be very intuitive. You're likely to be very independent in thought and have unique bolts out of the blue when you get an insight about something, and just sort of things click and become and bring clarity into your life. You might also be someone who has an interesting history with mental health, and maybe you've gone through periods of big change and transformation in those areas, where at some point you you had a breakdown, right? You had a nervous breakdown, but then later in life you became the person who guides others through mental struggles. So this could be interesting. And I think another way this can manifest is 12th house representing foreign lands and places of isolation. You can be somebody who travels to those places, or who's had unique experiences visiting those placements or working with people that can be found there. If you have Neptune in the 12th house, so Neptune in the 12th is interesting, because in terms of the things that we don't see or the things that we hide, with Neptune here, you might hide your sensibility or your artistic self-expression. You might be someone who doesn't, a child, like a painter who grew up in the family of math teachers, and they just think painting is not as important. So here you are encouraged to connect with your spiritual gifts, to connect with your talents, and to express them. On the negative, there might be poor boundaries, right? Neptune in the 12th could create a sense of like merging with other people, or not having boundaries around your gifts, around your intuition, where you give too much to other people to a point that you feel drained and unappreciated. So learning to build better boundaries is important here. And also just accepting that you think differently, that you have this unique dream life. Maybe you see, maybe your thoughts are set to music, or you see the world as like a poem. You're like quick to create something. So you're very much encouraged to connect to that, to express your creativity, to you know, tap into your muse, connect with your muse, and have some creative stuff. And also have some creative stuff, have some creative experiences, right? And also doing work that serves other people with Neptune here is almost a must. I think art is definitely very supportive of other people, but you might also use your intuition, your insights, and your sensitivity to help other people, and you might enjoy that quite a lot. If you have Pluto in the 12th house, Pluto in the 12th house will make you really private. There might be a whole other hidden side to your life or side to your personality that you're not expressing. There might be a lot of hidden stuff around Pluto, so around like power and sex. Like, you know, you might not share what's going on in your sex life with other people, sort of feel ashamed on some level. Your passions, maybe you feel like your passions are not supposed to be known by the world. So, you know, here, learning to tap into that side of yourself, even if you still keep it private, not rejecting it, not conforming to this society and what they expect of you. Of course, you know, don't do anything that's unhealthy or hurtful to other people, but definitely don't shy away from exploring your unique side of self. It's also a sign of someone who can be very obsessive about certain things, like, you know, especially when it comes to occult, hidden stuff, secrets. You can be like, you can have this like very focused mindset where you zoom in on a topic and research as much as you can. And suppressing, like when I talk about power and control, there might also be like a big suppression of like anger and frustration until it burns out and bursts out in the open. So try not to, like I said, try not to like hide your true side from yourself for too long. You might also have really like powerful, deep dreams here. Let me know how this shows up in your life. If you have Chiron in the 12th house, Chiron in the 12th will be a wound that has to do with loneliness, where people are very afraid of being alone, but not always admitting it to themselves or to others. There might be a tendency to hold on to relationships, friendships, especially early in life, right? As you get older, you're likely to become more self-sufficient, but for a long time, there might be that fear or struggle to separate being alone from being lonely. There might be a sense that being alone equals to being lonely, and they may try to fill their time with friendships, with music, with sounds, and sort of try to avoid facing their own fears, right? There might also be a lot of kind of invisible issues of self-doubt, self-sabotage, bad self-talk, not believing in yourself, victimizing yourself, right? On the positive with Chiron, as always, we can become the greatest healers. We can become, this placement will give you a lot of intuitive powers, a lot of sensibility, a lot of kind of awareness of what the world needs and what other people need. You might see their face and already know how they're feeling. So helping others by using your gift and helping other people grow, helping other people heal will also help you feel better, because that's how we heal Chiron. We work with other people, and then through healing them, we heal ourselves. So I hope you found this video helpful. It's rather a longer one because 12th house is just a very interesting place. Please share with me how this manifested in your life, how you're dealing with these placements, whether you have anything to add, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.